Hello, everybody.
Welcome to our fourth episode now of Lost Sanity Studios Film Podcast.
Yeah, on the eve before Cinco de Mayo.
Cinco de Mayo. Oh, wait.
Yeah, I can't sing, but go ahead.
Wait. We got a song, though.
No, we don't. No, we don't.
Tequila en la noche.
Me gusta, me gusta.
Mimosa en la mañana.
Me gusta, me gusta.
We're still working on it. So, our last episode was an inspirational one, and I hope everyone appreciated that.
Yes.
The one before that, we got to learn about Gracie Ray, myself, and so this time we get to learn about...
Me! And it'll be the opposite of inspirational. It'll be like, why are you on the air?
No.
Why is this guy a part of this stuff? I'm kidding. He's
being sarcastic because he's a pasty sarcastic
I'm a pain
person.
in the ass is what I am.
No, you're not.
Yes, I am.
Actually, you have a lot of experience and a lot to bring to the table, specifically.
Well, thank you.
From the perspective of, we've actually gotten a lot of people asking, tell us from the perspective of a film festival director, what is it that you're looking for? What are the things that you've learned? Mm-hmm. But let me first introduce you. So, Brian Hobson was first a comedian, then an actor,
yes,
then a voiceover actor.
Right. And then a professional ice skater.
And
which one was I not?
No, he was
out of
not.
The above?
And during all of those things, he was also a paranormal investigator.
Yeah.
And then later synced up with myself, and we created Lost Sanity Productions, and we also have Lost Sanity International Film Festival.
Yeah.
Am I forgetting anything?
No, you're right on target.
Okay.
And we got some nice film projects in the works, which we will delight all of you with later, at a later date.
So tell us about your inception. Where are you from?
I can't speak much of my conception, but that's
don't.
between my parents. But my inception, I am born and raised on the outskirts of Philadelphia in a little town called Rosemont, which has the same mailing address as Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania. So many of you will know Bryn Mawr, right by Villanova University. It's a relatively sort of a small town, but within the confines of a very big town. So it's not unlike New York, and there's access to a lot of hubbub, but I prefer a small town. So it's nice. We're now living in Jersey.
So you're a small town boy.
Yeah,
so
I would say so.
How does a small town boy become a big city producer? Were you always interested in film?
I was kind of like, to a less severe degree, but like the kid and the cable guy, how he was just like sitting in front of the TV.
Right.
That was like me. I inhaled television growing up. I had like every episode of every show in the 80s memorized.
What shows?
Oh my gosh. You name it, Family Ties, The Brady Bunch, everything, anything. Technically the Brady Bunch was like 70s, 60s, but all those aired when I was young.
But
so I watched all that stuff.
You have a very nostalgic Hollywood. I mean, if you look at our Instagram, which is, I think it's Lost Sanity Film.
Yeah.
I want to say, I'll post it down below, but you post a lot on our Instagram page, and it's a lot of Jane Mansfield and
Marilyn Monroe.
It's very...
by the way, I was born in the same hospital Jane Mansfield was.
Oh, nice.
Obviously different years, but we're from the same hometown.
But it seems like you're really attracted to the Hollywood golden age.
Oh, for sure.
Is there a
Jimmy
reason
Stewart,
why?
It's a Wonderful Life, my favorite movie. I don't know. I feel like, I don't know, just like that, that warm, fuzzy feeling like Christmas morning. That's how I feel when I'm watching like old Hollywood or old TV shows or, anything like that. It reminds me of my childhood, and that's a very safe, comforting feeling. And I don't profess to have the greatest memory with a lot of things, but I have a photographic memory when it comes to television and film. Like I can spot an actor's face, which actually has happened to me here in New York, where I'll see an actor and I'll like tell them their whole filmography, and they'll be like freaked out, like, how the hell did you know all that? And I just can remember those episodes or those movies like I was watching them today.
Right.
So I've always been a magnet, or or film's been a magnet to me. And I knew I knew I wanted to do something creative from a young age, even if it wasn't necessarily TV or film. I knew I wanted to do something within the confines of that creative world. So
it sounds like very loving, very wholesome family, and very much there was an attraction to that kind of television.
Yeah.
But I also know that you're very into horror.
Oh,
and,
yes.
A kind of
lifelong
and
horror
oddities.
junkie.
Yeah, oddities.
Oddities would be accurate, yes.
So do you think that you looked at film as different than TV? Was film an escape? Was it another world, a bigger world? Was it excitement for you?
Oh, 100%. Like, TV was almost like neighborhood friends.
Right.
I mean, and don't get me wrong, I had friends. I went out and played. But like my mom always said, like, she could go out and she'd come back after a couple hours, and I'd be in the same spot, like playing with the same action figures, like creating my own world and stories. And she was kind of fascinated by that. And I was writing from a young age and telling stories. So like television was kind of like my home. They were like my friends at home, and I just knew all the characters and all that stuff. But like you said, when there was a movie on, that took on a different feel. That was like an experience outside of the norm. And, growing up in the early 80s, you also didn't have access to like cable was it came a little later, folks. I'm dating myself, but that wasn't readily accessible when I was younger. So, Wizard of Oz came on once a year.
It was an event.
And if you missed it, you missed it. Like, there was no taping it and watching it over. So movies were a big deal. You had to go to the movies to see them, unless, they got to that point where they were on TV. And again, like I said before, they aired once. So you had to catch it, and it was a special thing.
We were just talking about Game of Thrones today, and the creator, the writer, George Martin.
Yeah.
And he actually lives out of Santa Fe, and he bought an old, old vintage rundown, like it was basically falling apart movie theater, so that he could screen Game of Thrones.
I love that.
And I love that too, because it's like, wow, that's really, when you're watching Game of Thrones, for instance, you get that experience of being at home, but also this like huge, big production, otherworld escapism. That's so exciting and so thrilling. So that made me think of that.
Oh, yeah.
So you went from that to comedian.
Yes, I did.
How did that happen?
Well, I was always kind of a goofball. Like, I remember being in like a day camp, and I won like funniest whatever camper. And I guess like I was, funnier than I even realized. Like, people just would laugh and say, "Oh, you're really funny." I'd never really thought much of it at the time. But I grew up watching like Abbott and Costello and like the Three Stooges and, Blondie, like those old black and white comedy shows. And I always gravitated toward comedy as well. So it was kind of this combination of comedy and horror. So I think what's
interesting in that is that you'll later see that in your writing. I did leave out that he's not just a writer; he's our writer, our production writer.
Well, thank you.
I don't enjoy writing scripts.
But you're good at it.
Well, I'm a good ghostwriter. I have worked under a lot of producers. Of course, you would never know that I worked on these films. That's something that I actually never talked about. But so I'm like a fixer when it comes to scripts. But you come up with these very original ideas. But it's interesting to hear the things that struck you as a child, because I see that in your work, even in your horror work. I see that, and it's so funny because my thing as a child, we're twins basically, but raised on two separate coasts. I was so into I Love Lucy,
right?
And probably every single one of my scripts, I'm like, oh well, there has to be a Latin, know, like come on, and he's like, oh okay, like all of our stories are gonna have this like Latin theme to them, and I just have to have it because that's what we were raised with. So
it also shows you had good taste, because you're not going to beat like Lucy and the Honeymooners and the Munsters and the Addams Family, classics. So.
Right. So actually comedy brought you to New York City.
It did. Yeah. To fast forward quite a bit. I was feeling kind of burned out in Pennsylvania, not knowing what to do. And I remember saying to my parents, I wish there was just a comedy school in New York, because that's really like, at the time, that's all I wanted to do. And lo and behold, I opened this trade magazine called Backstage. All you actors and producers are very familiar with it. And they had an ad, comedy school opening in New York. And it was just so serendipitous to me that I told my mom, I was like, I got to audition for this. And it just so happened I had done some comedy at a workshop here in New York about a year prior to that. So I knew who was running the school, and I said, hey, can I come up and audition? And the guy was thrilled. He was like, wow. He goes, it's so funny because I actually thought of you in my head, and I was hoping you'd at least come and audition for this school. Because I was doing also I should mention local stand-up comedy in the Philadelphia area. But unfortunately, that's about all you're going to do in the Philadelphia area when it comes to comedy, is like open mics and little clubs. So long story short, I came up and I auditioned for this comedy school, and we had to do an acting monologue and a little bit of our stand-up. Oh, and to just add to the pressure of that, I was also being filmed for national television. They mic'd me up and said, we're going to record your audition. Is that okay? Oh, yeah, no pressure there. That's great. Just add that onto the pile. But you know what? I auditioned, and I was halfway home in the car, and got a phone call and said, we would love to have you. We don't even want you to get home before, knowing that we want you in the school. And that was a tremendous validation for me, because they were only accepting 13 students from the country, and I was one of them, and I felt like extremely honored to be accepted. So it was very nice, because this school was affiliated with like Rick Moranis and all these big names from Canada and the United States, and it was really cool.
And what came out of that experience?
Oh, my confidence, I would say.
What about the offers you got, though?
I did get offers to do some comedy tours and college tours, and had some interest from MTV, and that was it was amazing. It's very assuring when you're a comedian and somebody finds your material worthy and valuable, and they were laughing at something you wrote, you performed, and it meant a lot to me. And I did comedy for a very long time, but as with anything,
I love the Freudian choke happening right now.
Well, I did impressions and I acted wacky on stage, but I just got kind of tired of my own shtick and my own voice. And I was like, is this really, really, truly what I want to do with my life?
I've also heard that a lot of comedians can, behind the scenes, it can be very dark, very...
Absolutely.
It's
absolutely.
dirty,
very depressing,
clubs.
To be honest with you. A lot of comedians are...
People need to hear that,
are depressed people. They really are. And that shocked me, because I never came from, a traumatic childhood setting, not to the degree where I would walk around depressed.
Right.
I came from a loving household, so I kind of felt like an anomaly, because to me it was just an act, and it was just to go out there and make the audience laugh. And to a lot of these people, they were making deep statements about, who they were as individuals and why they should be validated. And that it was difficult. It was a difficult environment. So I realized, go ahead.
You also see that in Hollywood as selling statements.
100%.
I'm doing this for all the little girls out there.
Right.
And, honestly, if I ever get some big award, you'll totally hear me say that,
No, I totally get that part of it. But it was just when you're living in that environment with these people every weekend at these clubs.
Right.
I mean, it's like, whoa. I mean, to be honest, my goal was to do Caroline's. I got to do that twice. That's the big comedy club in New York. I got to open for Damon Wayans. That was a cool experience, and that was awesome. But what I realized is I loved doing sketch comedy, because I formed a sketch group with these people that I went to the comedy school with. And we had a blast, and we would do it every week at a club called Il Flamingo in New York. And we were called the 10th Floor. And it was a great experience. And a lot of those members have gone on to do some really cool stuff in this industry. But I also self-produced a comedy, a sketch comedy thing, which I I wrote most of the show, not all of it, but I had some dear friends that I performed with. One of which, Steven, if you're listening, I love you, brother, and he's hilarious too. And it was a great time.
Wait, so pause there, because there's something I find interesting about your story that I can't necessarily relate to, but I think that it is very important for people to hear about, which is, Philadelphia compared to New York City, you're about 2 hours out, right?
Yeah.
And so you move out here and you were, practically a teenager, right?
Yeah, let's just say that.
Okay.
We'll say that. That's right.
You were in your teens.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
I wasn't, but that's...
do you want to say how old you were?
No, that's okay.
Young. Very young.
Yeah, I was really, really young.
Okay.
Practically out of the womb.
Right.
Let's put it that way.
But you did move out here, and, Philadelphia, of course,
Yeah.
you need a car, just like when
Yeah.
I was living in LA for most of my life. I mean, I literally, at 15 with a permit, was driving like 25 miles away from my house. I shouldn't have, but I did.
Right.
And so that was always a part of my existence.
I had a unicycle, so it was different.
Right. But when you move to the city, you don't have a car. You don't have that accessibility.
Definitely not.
Even me moving from California, I was like, oh, wow. I just,
Yeah, you got to walk here.
Yeah.
You got to walk here, people.
But I love to drive, and it's like very, I can't just jump in a car and go home.
Yeah. It's a culture shock. I mean, I remember my parents were like, the first time they saw me when I visited home, I think I lost like 15 pounds from just walking around. And it's not like...
It's like miles, though.
Yeah, it is. But after a while, you just don't think about it.
But you had to be, and I could imagine anyone moving to Los Angeles or New York or to these big cities to be performers or, to be in the industry. I mean, especially coming from a loving family, that must have been, you must have been homesick.
I 100% was. 100%.
How did you get through that?
I was very close with my family, still am, we're a close unit, and my sister at the time was very young, and so we were very close, so I missed her a lot too, and my other siblings, of course, but like she was like my buddy, and my mom and my dad, like it was rough. And in the beginning I went home and I visited often.
She was your baby, and she just today had a baby.
Yes, she did. Yeah. Kristen, we love you.
But it was also perfect.
And the baby girl.
It was also perfect that, your childhood, she was 11 years younger than you. So she was like your baby. But then I moved out here at the time, literally at the perfect time when she was getting married.
Yes, you did.
So, Brian and I, we pray. We don't apologize for being spiritual people.
No, and neither should anybody else.
Exactly. So honestly, God had a plan.
Yes. Oh, I firmly believe that. Especially the older I get, the more I see there's a divine plan in everything. Literally.
So what would you say to people who might feel homesick, or maybe they moved away from home to be filmmakers, and if they're experiencing loneliness or homesickness, what would you advise them, or what would you tell them about your experience?
Well, I would just try to remind them what made them make that move in the first place. Right. You don't just get up and decide to do it because you're bored one day and there's nothing on TV. There's a voice in you that is saying, you have a passion, you have a desire to do this, so you have to see it through. So as, I'm a little bit of a history nerd. So, George Washington used to tell his troops, just stay the course. Just stay the course. Even when you're tired, when you're upset and you don't understand, like, why things aren't happening at the level or the pace that you want them to, just stay the course, because it's going to work out for you exactly as it's meant to. And, the times that I have gotten desperate or sad or upset, I just kept going because I knew there was something in me that needed to be here using my creative talent. Even when I didn't fully understand what that was or how that would unfold, I knew I needed to be here to do it.
Right.
And I'm very grateful that I made myself stay.
And also, I would say for people who are listening to this, and if you're young and a filmmaker, if you're a performer, sure, you do have to move to these bigger cities for more opportunities. But if you are specifically a filmmaker, which is how I identify with, like, I'm not going out on auditions. Even if I get offered work, honestly, I rather be behind the camera, these days, working on my craft. You could do that from anywhere. You don't have to be in a big city. So if you have more questions on that, we would love to follow up with you. But honestly, like, the homesickness has to be a big deal. And, one day we might be on set for 3 months out of the year, or maybe on a press tour. I think it's a part of the lifestyle, and it's really important to be firmly grounded in a foundation. And I do see so many performers or filmmakers make filmmaking their lives, and I honestly think it's a mistake.
I do too. I mean, you have to have a life outside.
You absolutely do.
Even my old comedy instructor would say that you must have a life. You can't sacrifice everything for this industry. If there's somebody's wedding you want to go to, go to it. Don't skip an audition to like miss out on an important life event.
Right.
Go to the thing that's going to make you happy and fulfilled. And
honestly, like, I know this is about you, not about me, but you taught me this stuff. You taught me, stop putting Hollywood first. It's not putting you first. So stop giving it, a seat at your dinner table. It maybe doesn't need it, because so many filmmakers are trying to get in instead of contributing what they have. But you don't know what you have until you go live your life.
That's right.
You have to have a life outside of Hollywood. You have to have a perspective.
Absolutely.
Which is why people like, George Martin, he used to be a screenplay writer, and he left it to do novels, and now he has Game of Thrones. That's not by accident. We're here to give to the industry, not to take from it. And I think that that's a really important thing to note, right?
It absolutely is. And you know what? Take time out to have some fun and be a goofball too. No matter how serious and how intense your day is, go do something spontaneous and fun, even if it's just having coffee somewhere. Like today, we walked up and we played video games somewhere. I don't think I've played video games in 10 years, and that was just fun, and we just did it just to be spontaneous and let loose a little bit.
Tomorrow, Cinco de Mayo, also notes my second year officially coming here, so it's pretty exciting. But also,
yes, it is.
We also went to this amazing German bakery.
Oh gosh, that was good.
I'm such a fatty. I just love
these. No, you're not. She's actually not at all, but
I am the way I eat, so that's fine. But the second thing to that I really feel like a lot of artists out there need to hear is, you're talking about coming out of school, and now you have these troupes, these comedy troupes, and you're starting these things, but you're still a young man. Did you have to work? Did you have to survive?
Oh, absolutely.
As does everyone.
But I'm actually glad you brought that up, as I'm stammering. Because in the beginning I was like, well, I can live off of my art. And so I would be making this meager salary doing this show. And I realized, like, I'm not better than anybody working. You know what I'm saying? Like, as an artist, you start, like, even if you're elevated a little bit, you start thinking, well, I can make a living at this and other people do it. But no, you got to freaking work. So get out, pay your bills, do whatever you have to do to keep your head afloat. And you know what? Life is a balance, and you're going to find that balance, and you're going to find the right rhythm for you. But pay your bills. Don't starve yourself because you're doing this play uptown and you have to miss work shifts because there's 20 rehearsals. You talk to your director and say, hey, I got to eat, so I'm going to be missing this rehearsal and this one because I got to pay my bills. Well, that's important.
And I think it's not just important, and I want to bring up an article that, I know you and I both read, but it's important because we're not here making these things because we're going to make money off of it, which a lot of people do. They try to do like podcasts and all of these things, like, here, buy this, buy that. Look, we were there. We honestly were there. And if our journey meant anything, it just helping you and possibly you hearing this, that brings us purpose, okay? So that's what we're getting out of this experience. But so many times I remember hearing like, no, leave your best friend's birthday party. Don't show up for your life and your friends and your stuff be there, you know, dedicated to this craft because that's what it's going to take. And that's why we're called Lost Sanity Studios. We started doing the opposite. We started saying, no, my life is important. I'm important, and I'm going to put myself first.
Right.
I can do things, you know, I can make movies when I make movies. I can edit from my laptop. Like, calm down. Everyone is so intense in this industry. They need to calm down. So it's really important to hear that.
It's very important to calm down in this industry.
Yeah. Just because you're an artist, it doesn't mean you can be an asshole and like, oh, my art is more important than this job. Like, they're trying to run a business. That's their dream, and you're there to fulfill it. So honestly, if you move through life with integrity, you're going to attract people with integrity. And that's really important as you're trying to build your business. You know,
and the truth is, I booked more paying work in this business when I took the severity out of who I was auditioning for and what it was about. And I went in and I had a bit of fun and I relaxed and I didn't worry or try to judge myself if I didn't get it. When I walked out of there, just, whatever audition it was, just thinking, you know what, I did my best. And honestly, if I get it, that's great. But if I don't, I still know I did a great job. And I honestly, like, whether it was voiceover work or some TV parts, like, that's when I actually booked it. When I took that fear out of who these people were. Mm-hmm. And I took, and not to say it's not important, but I took the fear behind all that, the importance that builds up in our brain about, oh, it's this person and that. Mm-hmm. When I let that go, I think they sense like, oh, these people are confident, they're relaxed. And it's like almost like they want you more,
right?
But
there's
but there's
also,
what I'm saying.
There's no like rhyme and reason. Like we've heard people say, "Oh,
no formula."
Like that guy reminded me of Joe, my uncle.
Oh yeah.
It's like you get like there's so many coaches out there, and they
all have their own ideas of what will get you cast.
Oh my gosh, and it's like obviously. Not to be mean, like, but genuinely, they're coaching for a reason. They're also actors, right?
I think my voice just skipped like Peter Brady. Time to change.
Because it's like these are the things that we know, but it almost feels like you're not supposed to talk about this, publicly. But honestly, that's what it is. But also, you got a lot of opportunities from doing service, didn't you? You created a community.
Absolutely.
Online on Facebook go ahead.
Absolutely. I started like an actors page just to support each other. And I ended up getting work from it, which that wasn't even the goal. It was just to kind of create a network where artists can, it was called the Artist Exchange, and people just could throw up casting notices and things like that. And I ended up getting a voiceover gig for a film that went to Sundance from it. And I was like, wow, that wasn't even the goal, and something positive came out in my life from it. So it was very satisfying. It really was.
I think the reason why is, you talked about your wholesome upbringing. It's about being loving. It's about being supportive and encouraging. And then you go to Hollywood and it's like they're trying to like rip your fucking nipples off. It's like, what the hell is going on? And it is insanity, which is why like we realized we're doing the opposite. And that honestly, if like nothing comes from it, at least we can stand in our integrity. So that's fine.
Right.
But then also there was an article recently about an actor from this like sitcom, and then he was working at a grocery store, and someone had snapped a picture of him and posted it online, and were making fun of him for working at a grocery store. And it was just like, what a troll. Like, are you serious? This guy has the decency and the integrity to be working as an artist.
And they're trying to shame him? Like, that's ridiculous.
And believe me, I lived in Hollywood. I know all of these guys, all of these dudes, all of these people.
Right.
It is filled with so many, charlatans who on the outside act like they have money, act like they have success. They are living off their family. They are living off their significant others. It is so common in Hollywood because not everyone can support themselves as actors. You can hit one out of the park, and then the next one, like, it takes you 10 years to get your next movie made. It can be difficult. So if you have to work a side job, just really like use that as encouragement. And I'm so proud if that man ever hears this for whatever reason that he would. Oh my God, I'm so proud of you. Like, you keep doing it, dude.
Right.
That's what it's about, you know?
Well, I just want to share a very quick casting story from a producer that, I won't mention any names or specific shows, but she was with a very big show, and she said we were casting for this part of a father in a sitcom, and this one guy came in and blew it out the box. He was obviously very well rehearsed and knew all the lines. And another guy came in, she said he was awful. And we went, she said we went to the back, and the guy making the ultimate decision said, well, I want to go with the second guy. And she said, well, we were all dumbfounded because the first guy was just amazing and he was perfect. And they asked the decision maker, well, why? Why are you going with this other guy? And he said, he reminds me of my uncle.
That was the uncle.
That was literally the entire reason he got the part. Had nothing to do with preparation or talent. So just on the note of just not taking things so seriously, just don't let this business eat you up, because it can be intangible things like that, which can, cost you a role. So don't look in the mirror and think you did something wrong, or just have a happy life. Live your life.
For all the actors out there, we'll do another series for you all, and you can hear the truth about truths. So
yeah.
Also, so going back to your story, and here you are, you're doing your sketch stuff, and then how do you go from that to acting in theater, and how did that happen?
Well, it was a very natural transition. Some friends saw me do a short film that I was cast in, and he happened to be casting a play. And he was like, hey, man, I really would love you to be in this. So I auditioned, and he was like, dude, you have the part. You don't even have to, you don't even have to call me. You already have it. Just show up at the read through. And with this particular group, I ended up doing, a bunch of plays with them. And that led to even more theater work. And I'm very proud to say that I got actually written up in backstage for my dramatic work, which I never thought would happen, because I honestly viewed myself as a comedy guy or the crazy character horror guy, but definitely not the dramatic type. And this guy saw it in me. He said, no, not only am I giving you this particular part, you're going to have the most dramatic scene in the play. And it was very validating. And that, to me, challenged a different side to myself and really made me love acting in all its forms and all its genres. So it kind of, it was very organic,
When did you know that you were a writer?
Thank you. I think probably from an early age, I knew I was very creative, because and I swear I don't say this to be braggadocious. This actually this is in line with the question. But I was actually tested when I was young, because when I would write stories, the teacher thought, like, he's really advanced. His vocabulary is like out there, and the stuff he comes up with is kind of not typical of his age group. So I had a side of me that was always very creative and loved to storytell. So I've been writing in one form or another my whole life, but I never labeled myself a writer until later, when I would write a lot of comedy sketches and later feature films and a bunch of short films. And it's just, it's tremendously gratifying creating your own world, as you well know. So
at what point did you decide, obviously you were doing comedy, you were doing voiceover, you were doing, it seems like you made it more about the acting at a certain point.
Right.
But at what point do you say, I love acting, but now I would actually like to try to produce my own content?
A lot of that was, I guess that was about 5 years ago or so. I started doing a slew of short horror films, because
what made you want to do that?
Quite honestly, because I was getting a lot of comedy work, and I love comedy. It's going to be my first love, in all cases. If anyone ever says, well, what do you love the most? I'm always going to have in my heart comedy. But I had this passion for horror, and I wasn't getting cast in horror roles, and I kind of wanted to go in that direction. So I said, if casting people aren't seeing it in me, then I got to create it myself. I've got to create my own hype. So I would write things that, quite frankly, I would want to play. I would write roles and things that I wanted to do. And because of that, I started getting cast in other people's horror projects. And that was wonderful because it kind of proved my point, and from there, I just...
so why not, it seems like for you producing your own content showcased you as a horror actor, but why not just stick with acting and doing horror? Why did you then decide, you know what, I'm going to do production. I'm going to be a producer.
I won't lie. There's a degree of joy in controlling the environment and not being in somebody else's story, not jumping through somebody else's hoops. When you're kind of playing the, creator role, it's tremendously gratifying. And of course, linking up with you and starting our own horror film festival and then our own film festival, it was wonderful because then we got to see other people's works and we kind of got to judge them, but judge them fairly on their work.
Them.
Yeah, and that's the thing. We try to be really supportive of that because I've been in that position. You've been in that position where we're trying to tell our story and we need people that were behind us being our cheerleaders and cheering us on. And that's the environment we want to create with not only our film festival, but our production company. Very actor friendly, very artist friendly. And we love you guys. We want you to know that. And that comes from a place of the heart. It truly does. And we always want to be the people that are looked at as, hey, they treated us fairly. They really respected us, and we felt like not only did we have fun, but we were really appreciated. And that, to me, if we carry that, if that is our legacy, then job well done. Because that's what we're trying to do. Just be supportive, loving, and appreciating the work.
So now you're here. Now we're here. Now you're a festival producer,
co-creator along
director.
With this lovely lady next to me.
Right. But how do you now identify? What are your ambitions going forward?
It's funny. I don't necessarily have a big calling to audition for other people's stuff. Not to say there aren't exceptions. There might be a cool story out there that I'd like to be a part of, but I'm really excited about creating our own content and sitting down with you and creating, like, what do we want to do next? Do we want to do a documentary? Do we want to do a scripted feature? Do we want to, do our own podcast? Do we want to, the world is our oyster and we're kind of like figuring out what we love the most and putting, different hats on and trying it out. And I love the freedom of that. You can't put a price on that. And that's been... It's been tremendous.
How do you balance, because we talked about being both responsible, like, hey, we live in a society and we have to keep our lights on. How do you balance personally between, the painstaking survival of it all,
survival job,
right? But then also being a creative person, which I think goes hand in hand with also doing a service to the world. It seems like us doing a podcast feels very, very similar to us doing a film. It's like, hey, let me give something out in the world, and really, we're independent, we're indie producers, we're putting up the money, we're putting up the supplies, we're doing it, and we really don't necessarily know. We can't really say this is exactly what we're gonna get in return,
right?
So for you, how do you do that? How do you stay motivated and have the energy and have the passion to fulfill that for you?
Well, there's a degree of, as you and I have discussed privately, sometimes you have to jump, you have to feel the fear, and you just have to jump off the ledge a little bit and know and stay the course and know you're going to land safely. And doing some of these productions does have a degree of risk. You don't exactly know how it's going to turn out, but if you believe in what you're doing and you love what you're doing, then you know that God's hand is behind you and just kind of leading your path. And that, to me, will always be something to to put my energy in. There's also, we're all going to have survival jobs that we have to take before we get to the quote unquote place we want to be, or the place we see in our mind's eye of where we want to be. But as long as you give yourself the time and not just say over and over, oh, I'd like to do this sometime, I'd like to get to that. No, make the time and actively pursue those things, then everything else is going to unfold for you. One thing that, I did some things on my own prior to you, of course, but with you in my life, you're a tremendous motivator. And we collectively make time to put effort into certain ideas that we have or certain projects, and you see what happens. Like, we literally did a feature-length documentary, working on a second one, now throwing around ideas for a scripted feature. And that doesn't happen by accident, because I know so many people, and some people I love dearly, who have the best ideas and they just never get to them. And it's like life happens, and fast forward 10 years and they're like, why didn't I get to that? I don't want to be that person. I've been that person in the past. I don't want to be that person anymore. So if I have an idea or a project or a passion in me, then I am damn well going to put the time into making that and bringing that to fruition.
Right.
Because that's what it's all about.
It seems like there's so many, you go out and there's this person who has an idea, or, oh, I'm an actor, but I don't have a manager or an agent or, any of those things. Did you have any of those things?
No, I mean, I had like some representation in quotation marks, but to be honest with you, the biggest jobs I ever got, I got on my own.
But that's different, LA and New York.
Yeah, you have to have representation in Los Angeles. In New York, there's a lot of open casting calls. But even the auditions I was sent on by other agents, they weren't passion projects. They were like, print ads or commercial bits where you're falling down or sneezing or coughing. These
those are still money.
Oh, absolutely. And listen, if you get that opportunity and you have the time, go to that audition. You can book that. I've been in like a print ad where I look sickly or I look geeky or and I was happy to have those jobs, and I've done voiceover works for, let's just say a wide array of commercials and products, not all of which I use. And I didn't care. I was very proud because it paid my bills.
But what's interesting is, you started this saying to stay the course.
Yeah.
So it sounds like when you say just jump, you're like, okay, make a plan and just jump into it.
Absolutely.
So it's like, for us, I moved here and it was like, when are we shooting it? But I have zero chill. I'm like, let's do it today. But, that's what I'm hearing from you is like, make a plan, and it doesn't matter, like, if you have the money. So many times independent filmmakers, I think one of the big mistakes that they make is like, I need $5 million for my first film. Yeah, fucking right, dude. What do you think you're going to do with that? Like,
right.
Who are you, unless you have a rich uncle, I still would not want to burn $5 million on my first project.
No, be smart. If you have $5 million,
mean? For people listening, what does that mean, be smart?
It means try to have a plan before you sink money into something and then figure out what you're going to do with it.
Right.
Try to figure out what the end game is before you even start shooting. Talk to distributors or friends of yours that have financed their own films and gotten deals. Like, don't go thinking you're going to make this grand project and then it's automatically going to be accepted into a huge distribution company or in theaters, which almost never happens, by the way.
Yeah, and then also, I love what you're saying, and just so we can break this down for filmmakers, so many times it's like, okay, my plan is to make this film and then send it to film festivals, no distribution plan whatsoever.
Right.
That's not necessarily a bad plan, but if it's like a $5 million movie that you somehow found the money to make, that's a really bad plan. You have to have, not that it's your fault. It's not like there's really like a book that breaks all of this down for 2019 where we are.
Right.
But, specifically like you don't need hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars to make a movie.
You truly don't.
You should, in the beginning, even if you are just making films to send them to festivals to get you the recognition so that you can have bigger opportunities, you still need to have that in mind. And if you're like, you know what, no, I'm not okay with making zero money on this film, I need to make money and recoup my losses, then maybe halfway through the movie, maybe right after you shoot, before it's even completed in terms of editing, maybe that's the point where you approach agents and distributors and ask them, ahead of time, would you be willing to distribute my project? Maybe when you have the treatment and you're trying to get actors attached, that's the point where you go to distributors and say, would you pick up my film? Would you distribute this for me? Would you be my agent if I finish this film? Like, is that something that the market needs? Because if you get that actor who's in every indie film, there's like Eric Roberts, it's like no one is going to pick up your film because Eric Roberts or whomever, whatever indie actor is willing to do it, that is not always a selling point. You have to know what is needed, what's wanted in the market. Before it was horror, actually.
Oh, yeah. Well, to me, it's always going to be horror because I love horror films. So that won't stop me reflective of how the industry's doing. Like, I always want to tell some horror stories and some funny stories. So that'll always be mixed in somewhere within our work. But we're also going to we're not going to be ignorant either. If there's a story to tell and it's going to be profitable, that's the story we're going to tell. But we're also going to enjoy ourselves. We're going to find the story that we want to tell within the confines of whatever genre that is.
Right.
And Brian, just very quick. Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, Brian and I put in the time when we were like, I'm going to take my own cash and put it into these films and see if I can make a good film. And we did that. And, we're still in the inception phase of our production company, but we're going to recoup. We have a plan for that.
Absolutely.
So if you're an independent film producer, the plan should not just be how do we get this movie made. It should be how do we get this movie made and what is the goal of it. The film is a product that's going to have an effect on the world.
Yeah, and don't go bankrupt making your film.
Right,
please don't.
It's not going to affect the world if it doesn't have a place to be seen.
Right.
And so our first documentary, we were like, we want it on Gaia, and it worked out really easily. Got it to Gaia. That was our goal. We got more opportunities than that. So
we sure did.
That surprised us, and that was exciting for us. But you do need, it should be of your entire production, only half of it should go into making your film.
Absolutely.
The other half of that plan needs to be who's going to pick it up, how is it going to be distributed, what markets is it going to hit. So we'll talk about that in the future, but these are things that we learned along the way.
Absolutely. And network with people in terms of talent. You can get quality crew, which are not going to bankrupt your funds. And I say very quickly, if you have $5 million, don't make one film, make 10 films. Mm-hmm. Budget that accordingly, and trust me, you can get quality project. Or call us. You can give me $5 million.
I'll make you 10 movies.
We will make 20 movies if that's what it takes.
No, 10.
No, we're not going to make 20 movies. Just time-wise, we're not going to make 20 movies. I think I'd be dead by then, but you'll still be alive and kicking. But
I'll have them done by next November.
That's right. But fun fact about me, I'm also obsessed with Marilyn Monroe. I have a lot of Marilyn stuff.
How many Marilyn tattoos do you have at this point?
I have 2.
Okay.
I will probably maybe stop at that just in case my mom's listening.
I feel like your alien ship that's beaming
I have
up
an alien
is
ship.
Marilyn. No?
Yes, that's true. Yeah, I guess technically that's 3. I'm also paranormal obsessed. I love all the ghost stuff. And clearly I'm a tattoo fan. And, and Emma Stone is my favorite actress. I'm just throwing out random facts.
One more thing, though, that, something that was asked is, what do you look for? What is the very first thing that you look for in terms of, people that are submitting their films to us for the film festival? What jumps out
I'm looking for an original story. Show me something.
Before the production value.
Oh, absolutely. be original. Like, take me into a world I've never been, or if you can even tell a tale that's been told 1,000 times in a completely different way, you're going to have my respect. I mean, look at all the variations of films like Robin Hood we've seen, or Peter Pan, or the what is it? The Scrooge, the night. What is that called?
Before Christmas?
Night Before Christmas. Someone's going to correct us on that. Christmas Carol.
Yeah.
Is that right? But I mean, I've seen this same premise over and over. But take that, throw it on its ass, and tell that in a new way. You're going to get my attention, and you're going to get the attention of people that do financing and make decisions, because that's what sticks out. Tell an original story.
That's actually you and I as a team. You're the idea man, and I have no problem saying that, because I'm the how you do it. Like,
well, trust me, this girl works her butt off. Like, without her, I'd be a guy that had a lot of creative, fun ideas, but very little means to see it through. So we balance each other very well. And she also is brilliant at editing. Like, I can present her a story. Well, I'm not just talking about that, though. I'm talking about like a script. Like, I can present her a story, which we were starting to read one that I wrote 5 years ago last night. And I can already see her wheels turning. Even if she doesn't say anything to me, I can tell where in her head she's already tweaking some things or modifying it. And I have no problem with that, because quite frankly, she's done it before with other people's works that have been on screen. Yeah. We will not name names, but this girl has fixed a lot of scripts for films you've probably seen
in the theater,
and she's got a knack for it. And how much did you get for it?
I got $0 in zero credit,
or nada, as we'll say, since it's before Cinco.
What can I lose by saying their name? I don't know.
Right, but
that's the thing is, it's kind of like Edison. If you know anything about Edison, he sounds so amazing, but he was an asshole. And
Tesla. Tesla is the one who gets the credit.
Yeah,
really.
But Edison,
Nikola Tesla, folks, look him up.
Edison in New Jersey, he was the one that like this guy brought to him projectors, and he was like, we can make movies, and he was like, oh, that's bullshit, and then he ended up totally stealing the idea.
Oh, absolutely.
Opening up his own
He's
theater.
Shady.
Yeah, and then when Fox, and it was another guy though, but they were like, these are really shitty movies, we're going to make our own. He sued them 220 something times.
Oh yeah.
To try to get a monopoly on filmmaking.
Look at look up AC/DC currents. I mean, you'll see there's a whole controversy with Edison and Tesla, but that's another thing.
But then it was three of them, producers. They wanted to have their own, cinemas and their own theaters. Right. So they were like, why are we even fighting this guy out of New Jersey? Like, F this. They moved to LA and they started Paramount, Fox. Yeah. And I believe Paramount, Fox.
Well, Hollywood was supposed to be here. It was originally Brooklyn. Brooklyn was really the original Hollywood.
No, New Jersey was.
Well, okay. But East Coast, well, I know like Kaufman, Astoria. Anyway, I don't want to,
It's fascinating, though.
Yeah, it is.
We'll do another podcast on the history of Hollywood, but
same with Betamax and VCRs, by the way, folks. For those who remember VCRs, Betamax actually came out with superior quality and was rated way above VCRs, but VCR had a kind of or VHS, I should say, had a hold on the industry. So Beta went bye-bye very quickly. So it's just interesting.
We're talking about monopolies because it wasn't until the 90s that sort of there was a shakeup. It wasn't until the digital age where you didn't have to be a major studio making films. Just the 90s. That was like yesterday. Right. So that's why, it is important to note, where are we coming from? What is our history? Because that's going to inform where we're going. And, the monopoly is still very much there. There's still a lot of things in Hollywood that are there, but awareness is power. And so we will be talking about these things and talking about how you can use these to your benefit. Our next podcast will actually be about our film festival and what we look for.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So, thank you, Brian, for sharing your story.
Well, thank you.
Is there anything else you want to tell anyone?
Just in terms of everything we said, as the old G.I. Joe cartoon used to say, knowing is half the battle. So educate yourselves and everything's going to be all right.
And stay
the course.
Love you guys.